Your words are not just sounds, they are actions. And in a world where everyone is talking, the rarest power is knowing when not to. The Stoics understood that self-mastery isn't just about what you do, it's about what you say, and more importantly, what you choose not to say. Because every word has weight, every sentence builds or breaks trust, every reaction reveals your character. Control over speech is control over the self, and a man who speaks with intention speaks with strength. This episode is a guide to that strength. We'll explore 7 Stoic principles that will reshape how you use your voice, starting with listening, guarding your plans, managing emotions, and ending with the unmatched power of silence. You'll learn how to protect your energy, your goals, and your reputation, not by speaking more, but by speaking better. If you're ready to stop reacting, start choosing your words with discipline, and build the kind of calm presence that commands respect, subscribe to Stoic Reflections. Like this video to affirm your commitment to intentional speech, and leave a comment sharing, what's one area in your life where silence might serve you better than speech? Let's begin. 1. Listen more, speak less. In a world obsessed with being heard, the Stoic chooses instead to listen. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he understands the real value of attention. Epictetus, who spoke rarely and observed deeply, taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't a clever phrase, it's a command, because most people talk not to communicate, but to perform, to prove they're smart, experienced, important. The Stoic doesn't fall into that trap. He knows that real strength lies in restraint. To listen more and speak less is to prioritize understanding over impression. It's the discipline of quieting your ego long enough to actually hear what someone else is saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk. When you listen deeply, you gain information. You gather context. You identify truth. But more than that, you disarm others. You build trust. You create space for clarity to rise, both in others and in yourself. And from that space, you respond, not react. This principle doesn't mean you silence yourself completely. It means you stop speaking unnecessarily. You speak with purpose. You wait until your words are rooted in value, not vanity. The Stoic asks himself before he speaks, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it aligned with virtue? And if it's not, he lets it pass. Because he knows that every word you put into the world either strengthens your presence or weakens it. Listening more also protects your energy. When you're constantly talking, you're constantly exposing, sharing too much, offering too many opinions, wasting mental effort in places where silence would serve you better. But when you listen, you preserve that energy. You watch, you learn. And when it's time to speak, your words land. Because they're rare, because they're considered, because they come from awareness, not impulse. The man who talks constantly reveals too much about his insecurities, his impulses, his need for validation. But the man who listens, he becomes a mystery, a force. He doesn't need to prove himself. His presence does that. And when he speaks, people lean in because they know it matters, because he's earned their attention by giving it first. So practice it in every conversation, every meeting, every moment of conflict. Listen more, speak less, not to be passive, but to be precise, because the man who owns his silence commands his speech. And the one who commands his speech, he commands respect. That is the first step to mastering your voice and mastering yourself. 2. Control your emotions. Words are never just words. They carry the temperature of your inner state. And when that state is inflamed by anger, jealousy, frustration, pride, your speech becomes dangerous. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, constantly reminded himself to stay calm in the storm, because he understood a powerful truth. The tongue is most dangerous when the heart is on fire. Losing control in speech is almost always a symptom, not of ignorance, but of emotional captivity. Think about it. How many times have you said something in anger you wish you could take back? How often has an argument spiraled because you spoke from pain, not principle? The Stoic doesn't try to suppress emotion, but he refuses to be ruled by it. He trains himself to pause, to breathe, to create space between feeling and speaking, because in that space you regain command. Controlling your emotions isn't about becoming robotic or numb. It's about becoming deliberate. Anger may rise, but it doesn't need to be voiced. Fear may surface, but it doesn't need to be projected. Irritation may poke at you, but it doesn't need to escape your mouth and poison a conversation. The Stoic channels those feelings. He studies them. He lets them inform his awareness, not dictate his behavior. There's immense dignity and restraint in being able to hold your fire long enough to make sure your words don't burn down something you care about. In responding with strength, not spike. In choosing silence or calm or clarity, especially when your instincts scream for reaction. That's not weakness, that's command. And command is what separates the impulsive from the disciplined, the loud from the wise. This discipline must be trained. Start with the trigger moments, the tension before you speak, the heat rising in your chest, the desire to prove a point, to win the exchange, to defend your pride. Catch it, don't obey it. Ask yourself, what would my highest self say right now? Will these words build or destroy? The more often you ask, the more naturally you'll choose wisely. Because in the end, no one ever regretted pausing, but millions have regretted what they said when they didn't. The Stoic aims higher. He knows that emotional control leads to verbal control, and verbal control leads to strong relationships, clear reputations, and peace of mind. That's not about being soft, it's about being sovereign. Over your voice, over your actions, over your fate. 3. Speak less than you think. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean it deserves to exit your mouth. The Stoic understands this deeply. Discipline of the tongue is discipline of the mind. To speak less than you think is not to censor your intelligence, it's to elevate it. Because what you hold back reveals as much strength as what you let out. Seneca said, "Speech in silence is better than speech in error." And in that, he captured the essence of this principle. Not everything that can be said should be said. The world encourages constant commentary. We're pushed to react, to speak quickly, to fill silence with noise. But the Stoic sees silence not as emptiness, but as power. He resists the urge to say everything he thinks because he knows that wisdom is not measured by how much you say, but by what you withhold. He doesn't fear appearing quiet. He understands that in restraint, there is depth, there is control, there is clarity. Speaking less than you think is also an act of protection. It guards your energy, your intentions, your strategy. When you constantly share every opinion, every plan, every emotion, you invite misunderstanding, you leak power. But when you hold back, you maintain leverage. You give yourself time to refine your thoughts. You allow others to reveal themselves while you stay anchored. That's not secrecy, it's strategy. Every time you choose not to speak impulsively, you give yourself a chance to speak intelligently. You pause, you consider, you filter. The Stoic asks, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this necessary? If the answer is no, he says nothing, not out of fear, but out of precision. He knows that his words carry weight, and he does not waste them, because the fewer words you use, the more each one matters. This principle also builds presence. The man who speaks less draws more attention when he does speak. His voice carries more gravity because it isn't diluted by constant commentary. People listen, not out of habit, but out of respect. And that respect is earned through consistency, through the repeated practice of choosing silence over impulse, clarity over noise, restraint over reaction. So the next time you're tempted to add one more comment, to speak out of frustration, or to fill the silence with your thoughts, pause. Let your words pass through the filter of necessity, because what you don't say is sometimes more powerful than what you do. And the man who speaks less than he thinks is not hiding, he's commanding. That's the discipline the Stoic lives by. Not loud, not careless, but measured. And in that measure, he finds his edge. 4. Guard your plans. There is a silent energy in things not yet spoken. Every time you talk about your goals before they're real, you risk leaking their power. The Stoics understood that intention is sacred, and that premature speech often replaces action with illusion. Epictetus advised us not to talk about what we will do, but to do it. Because every time you speak about your plans, especially to those who haven't earned your trust, you trade a piece of your future for a moment of validation. And that exchange is almost always a loss. Talking about goals creates a false sense of progress. You say it, people nod, and suddenly you feel like you've moved forward, when in truth, nothing has changed. The action hasn't happened. The resistance hasn't been met. The failure hasn't been faced. But your mind, rewarded by attention, starts to ease off. You become more focused on appearances than on execution. And the Stoic refuses to fall into that trap. He guards his plans like a craftsman guards his tools, not with paranoia, but with purpose. This doesn't mean secrecy out of fear. It means silence out of strength. It means allowing your actions to speak before your voice does. It means knowing that your goals are not for entertainment, they are for transformation. And transformation requires solitude, discipline, unseen labor. The Stoic builds in the dark so that when the results appear, they are undeniable. No need to convince, no need to justify, just proof. Guarding your plans also protects you from distraction. When you tell too many people what you're working on, you invite commentary, pressure, and doubt from those who don't share your vision. And now instead of building, you're defending. Instead of progressing, you're explaining. The Stoic avoids this by staying inward. He lets his consistency build confidence. He lets his progress speak in time. So practice restraint. When the idea is fresh, keep it close. When the fire is new, protect it from the wind of opinions. When the plan is forming, build momentum quietly. And when the results come, let them make the noise. Because the Stoic doesn't announce, he executes. And in a world full of talkers, the man who builds in silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. This is not about isolation. It's about ownership. Your goals are yours. Your journey is yours. Don't give it away for attention. Let it grow, unseen, until it becomes too solid to be ignored. That's the Stoics' way. Quiet intention, relentless action, undeniable results. 5. Choose your confidants. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Your thoughts, your doubts, your fears, your plans. These are not casual content. They are sacred materials. And sharing them without discretion doesn't make you open. It makes you vulnerable in the wrong way. The Stoics were clear on this. Trust is earned, not offered freely. Seneca warned us, "It is more important to choose our company than to guard our wealth." Because the wrong ears can be more dangerous than an empty bank account. Choosing your confidants means understanding that some people listen to support, while others listen to use. They collect your words like ammunition. They nod while you speak, but they file it away, not to help, but to manipulate, mock, or measure. The Stoic doesn't hate these people. He simply doesn't feed them. He observes, he evaluates, and most importantly, he speaks with intention. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every relationship deserves depth. This doesn't mean living in isolation. It means choosing wisely. Find the few who are steady when things are unstable. The few who don't just listen to your victories, but hold space for your struggles. Without gossip, without judgment, without turning your honesty into currency. Those people are rare. That's why they are called confidants and not audiences. And once you find them, you don't need to explain everything. You just need to be real. With them, silence is safe. Vulnerability is strength. And wisdom can be exchanged without fear. The Stoic also knows that true strength is often quiet, that not all wounds need to be voiced immediately, that some thoughts are meant to be processed within, refined before they're shared. Because words once released can't be retrieved, and reactions once triggered can't be undone. So he speaks slowly, selectively, and only to those who have earned a place at the table, not just with charm, but with character. Ask yourself, why am I sharing this? Will this person elevate it or dilute it? Have they shown consistency or just interest? These questions are your gatekeepers. Use them. Protect your mind like you would protect your home, not out of fear, but out of respect for the work you're doing inside. Because the wrong listener can distort your path, and the right one, they can help refine it. But the choice is yours. Speak wisely, share rarely, and remember, your peace grows in the soil of discretion, and the Stoic waters only what he wants to see grow. 6. Silence is power. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, the one who remains silent holds the real control. The Stoics didn't just tolerate silence, they wielded it, because silence, when chosen with intention, is not weakness. It is strategy. Marcus Aurelius, a man who held absolute authority, often reminded himself to say less, and when he did speak, to speak with precision. Why? Because the more you say, the more you reveal. The more you reveal, the more you expose. But silence protects. Silence commands. Silence disarms conflict. When someone attacks, mocks, or provokes, and you respond with calm, with stillness, with nothing, you refuse to give them what they want. You keep your center. You break the cycle. Because arguments feed on noise. Ego feeds on reaction. But silence starves both. It forces others to sit with their own words. It turns your restraint into a mirror. And often, that reflection says more than any comeback ever could. But silence isn't just defensive, it's creative. In silence, the mind clarifies. Direction sharpens. Insight rises. The Stoic seeks moments of stillness, not to escape the world, but to understand it, to study his own impulses, to regain command over his emotions. Because the man who can sit in silence with himself is never truly alone. He becomes his own counsel, his own advisor, his own anchor. Used well, silence builds presence. The person who doesn't speak unless necessary becomes someone others pay attention to. His words carry weight because he doesn't waste them. His calm becomes contagious. His stillness becomes unsettling, in a good way. In a world addicted to instant replies and endless noise, silence becomes a form of rebellion, a quiet refusal to play games, a demonstration of inner order. Of course, silence must be intentional. It's not about avoiding conflict or retreating from life. It's about knowing when to speak and when not to. It's about choosing your moments, your tone, your message, and understanding that sometimes the strongest message is no message at all. So practice silence, not as absence, but as presence. Let it become your reset button. Let it be your filter. Let it be your shield. Because the man who knows when to say nothing is the one most prepared to say everything when it truly matters. That's the Stoic advantage. Not louder, not faster, but calmer, sharper, stronger. All in silence, all by choice. 7. Let achievements speak. There is a difference between doing something great and needing everyone to know you did it. The Stoic chooses the former. He builds in silence, works without fanfare, and lets his results speak louder than any self-congratulating words ever could. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote to himself daily about humility, reminding himself, "Don't waste time on what others say of you." He could have bragged endlessly and with reason, but he didn't, because he understood a timeless truth. True achievement requires no announcement. When you talk constantly about what you plan to do, what you've done, what you're aiming for, you dilute the impact of the work itself. You shift your energy from creation to performance. The Stoic sees that trap clearly. He knows that applause feels good, but that it fades. What remains is the work, the legacy, the quiet, unshakable truth that you did what mattered, whether or not anyone clapped. Letting your achievements speak isn't about hiding, it's about honoring. Honoring the process, honoring the discipline, honoring the quiet nights of effort that no one sees. When you let the results emerge without the noise, they become undeniable. Not because you shouted, but because you delivered. That's not just Stoic, it's powerful. Because in a world addicted to self-promotion, Silence wrapped in results is magnetic. It draws respect, not attention, and respect lasts longer. This principle also protects your peace. When you're not constantly trying to prove yourself, you're free to be yourself. You stay focused. You work for the mission, not for validation. And in that freedom, your creativity sharpens. Your confidence grows. You stop chasing approval and start building impact. Quietly, steadily, authentically. So next time you feel the urge to announce what you're working on, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this for the outcome or for the reaction? Am I building something real or performing something temporary? And if your work is real, let it speak when it's ready. Let it arrive like a storm, unexpected, undeniable, unshakable. Because the Stoic knows the loudest voice in the room is often the one who says the least and does the most. You don't need to say, look at me. Let your work say, watch this. That's legacy. That's leadership. And that's the quiet force of a life lived with intention, not interruption. Mastery of speech begins not with your mouth, but with your mind. The Stoics didn't speak to impress, to dominate, or to perform. They spoke to serve truth, and more often they chose not to speak at all, because they understood what most people never learn. Restraint is strength, silence is strategy, and calm communication is a reflection of an ordered soul. You've now walked through 7 powerful principles, 7 ways to control your voice, guard your energy, and lead with intention instead of impulse. But the power of these ideas lies not in hearing them, it lies in living them. Listen more than you speak. Respond with clarity, not emotion. Let your plans unfold in silence. Choose your confidants with care. Let your actions carry the weight, and let your presence speak even louder than your words. This is how the Stoic leads, not with volume, but with value. If this episode gave you something to reflect on, if it helped you shift how you approach your own speech and presence, subscribe to Stoic Reflections for more weekly tools to sharpen your mind. Like the video to affirm your commitment to intentional speech, and share in the comments. Which of these principles will you begin applying today? Remember, the more you control your words, the more you command your life.